Hey everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for episode 168 of Album of the Day, and my episode to close out the summer of 2017 before eventually I head back to school in a couple of days, of course, following Labor Day weekend and stuff like that. I thought that for my final summer 2017 album review, I would talk to you about a band that I haven't heard too many people like on YouTube or wherever talk about necessarily, and I thought that they definitely deserved some love here. So today's artist is a Los Angeles, California band who formed around 2013, something like that, and have established a very unique sound, which is sort of a blend of psychedelic rock, soul, funk, and cumbia music, releasing their debut album around 2014 when they were still pretty underground and stuff. They are a band with a wonderful band name, by the way, Chicano Batman, they've recently signed to an independent label known as ATO, which is also the label for artists like Alabama Shakes, Benjamin Booker, Old 97s, Jessica Lee Mayfield, Drive-By Truckers. The list goes on and on of artists that they have on the label now. And I'm here to review their sophomore album, and their first to be released on a proper record label, so it's probably their first proper record for some people. And the album is called Freedom is Free, and this came out back in March the 3rd of 2017, but I didn't get to listen to this record till end of August, end of July, beginning of August, when ATO Records actually sent the CD to me along with a few others, which were some of their most recent albums that they had put out. Most of them had come out around June, but this one came out in March, so I'm getting to it a little bit late, but I have found what is probably one of the most unique records I've heard this year, and I thought I would definitely love to share it with you. And there's 12 songs of the record. It clocks in over 40 minutes. There's liner notes and the band lineup, as well as additional personnel and stuff like that. And it's produced by Leon McGills, who is a musician who is a pretty big part of the Daptone roster of musicians who can play the saxophone, keyboards, flute, just about anything he can put his hands on. And he's also a member of Daptone's Menahan Street Band, as well as he was a touring keyboardist for a couple of years for the Black Keys. So this record has a very kind of old school kind of soul sort of sound. Wasn't recorded at Daptone, but rather recorded sort of at a sister studio of Daptone, which is the Diamond Mine in Queens, New York. And there's a little poster of the band right there. Very nice photograph right there. And then here we have the lyrics and stuff, which 7 of the songs are sung in English, but there are 2 sung in Spanish as well as thank yous and stuff. So 9 of the songs do feature lyrics, but there's 3 of them that are instrumental, short little instrumental tracks, sort of transitioning into certain songs on the records. On the record. So that's the packaging for the CD version of Chicano Batman's sophomore album, Freedom is Free. I forgot to mention, I also love the album cover, too. Really pretty painting on here. So yeah, this is definitely a band that, whether you're into psychedelic music or if you're into some of that like soul stuff that's on the Daptone label, the way I am and stuff like that. But also, like, if you think Latin music doesn't really get as much love as it deserves, and you're just tired of hearing all the Latin stuff on the radio that's basically just, a glossy love song being translated to Spanish language, well then, this is definitely the record for you. It's definitely a very unique and fun blend right here. And majority of the music on this record is done by the band themselves, with some additional like instrumentation provided by producer Leon Michiels, as well as some backing vocals from New York's own mariachi Flor de Tolosh, or like I don't know, I'm probably not saying that right. So the opening track it opens up with the song Passed You By, which features this instantly memorable, like, psychedelic riff that kind of layers and weaves throughout the song very beautifully over some organ, bass, and drums, and some female backup vocals as well. It kind of sounds like maybe like a Dr. Dog song a little bit, but with more of a psychedelic, more kind of Latin twist than what you would expect from that band a little bit. So I do definitely hear a little bit of the indie rock sensibility in this band. So if you're into that kind of stuff, like maybe the more kind of non-traditional side of indie rock, well then this is definitely a record that I think you're going to dig. And right off the bat, we're taken aback by Bardo Martinez, by the vocals of frontman Bardo Martinez, which definitely have a very interesting, distinctive sort of tone to them, as he's singing lyrics about this person who seems to be dealing with problems and seems to be mad because the feeling of euphoria passes him or her by pretty much. So it may seem like kind of a somber, kind of introspective ballad in terms of the lyrics, but also definitely has a sense of catharsis to it as well, especially in that chorus where Bardo Martinez shows off a really just passionate vocal performance, especially as he sings, "Feel me as I reach the mountaintop." Definitely a great performance right there. There over the over the sort of call and respond female backup vocals on the song. Then we have some of the singles on the record, which I think are great, like the song "Friendship is a Small Boat in a Storm," which features these roaring, sort of fuzzed out organ stylings that instantly become memorable as they kind of slice through the ears, but in a good way, I must say. Over the kind of easygoing guitars and drums on the song, and bass. And this is a song sort of Bardo sort of talking about his talking about how he's sort of working on trying to get a grip on his emotions and stuff. So he thinks all is said in confidence, but then he realizes that friendship sort of just feels like this small boat in a storm because of all the kind of paybacks that it kind of can cause sometimes. And also sort of revealing that, his mother told him, don't trust anybody because they'll just stab him in the back and take his money and stuff. So you can tell from the lyrics that he kind of grew up in sort of a kind of a rough neighborhood, pretty much, from from the lyrics and stuff, as he's like just drowning and sinking further through and stuff. But like at the same time, it definitely has sort of an easygoing, laid-back feel to it that I really like, to contrast the kind of more melancholy lyrics with just like an amazing psychedelic guitar solo in the middle. Well, as well as the female backup vocals from Mariachi Flor de Taloche, which make the chorus just hella catchy. Friendship is a small bone in a storm. But pretty much the lead single on the record is the title track, Freedom is Free, which definitely kind of takes the more optimistic approach lyrically, talking about. So he does sort of reveal how to some people life is just a jaded game to them, and unfortunately they won't give it a chance. But then also but he's also sort of revealing how when he's here on Earth, he's going to rejoice in his worth, and sort of talking about how you can't take that away from me. Like even if the world seems to be kind of taken down by things such as like violence and racism and stuff, which is further sort of talked about in the line of, "You got your guns up on display, but you can't control how I feel. No way." And sort of say, no amount of negativity could have put a dent in me. Once again, showing some catharsis in such a good way, and also sort of showing off his songwriting skills with lines like, "Life will flow on as long as there are ripples in the waves and sun rays from the sun," which is further elevated by like his very like sort of inviting, distinctive voice. And the song musically definitely is really nice, and the layers of instrumentation and just the really important role that all of them play on this song, just incredible. From it has really good bass line on it, nice steady drum beat that keeps time with it really nicely, and Carlos, the lead guitar player, definitely does do a good job showing off some really memorable, melodic, and very unique sort of riffs that he plays. Like the notes that he plays are definitely very well put together and stuff. Now I'll talk about more deep cuts on this record. Really like the song Angel Child, which has kind of this soulful, piano-laced sort of vibe to it, and it is like sort of and the lyrics, I can tell that this song is like pretty much like about like his daughter, pretty much, but he definitely does make the story seem really like compelling, especially in that bridge when he says, "You're so wild and free, just like the unspoken words spoken by the tree of life." That's poeticism right there. And also a really interesting, beautiful, entertaining vocal performance in the chorus as well. But then all of a sudden in the middle we get this really cool, like fuzzy sort of psychedelic like guitar solo in the middle that sounds like something pulled straight out of like King Gizzard's playbook or something like that, but at the same time very unique as well. Then we have a song called La Jura, which introduces some of the Spanish singing on the record, which starts out with this little intro, which transitions into the actual song. Beautiful with acoustic guitar, as well as some electric riffs and percussion. So it's pretty simple, but at the same time has such an interesting sort of melody to it as well. that definitely transitions into the actual song really nicely, which features bassist Eduardo Arenas singing in Spanish here, and definitely and he gives off such a beautiful performance, and really to show how I may not understand really a word that he's singing necessarily, but like I just love like the way it sounds is definitely, but like the bilingual style at the same time definitely just sounds so cool in my opinion, as it really does show the band's sort of how the band is very much kind of Latin band at heart, pretty much. And I love all the different layers of instrumentation on the song, including the keyboard in the background, which somewhat sounds a little Stevie Wonder inspired or something like that. Heard, as well as the layers of guitars are really nice as well. Some great organ on the song. But then we were thrown for even more instrumental curveballs towards the end. We get a vibraphone as well as a flute played by Leon Michiels, as well as kind of this scuzzy baritone saxophone that pops up at the end as well. Scuzzy tenor saxophone that pops up at the end. Up at the end. It's definitely a great song with definitely a very complex musical structure, which I do really like, and stuff like that. Which eventually it does close out with kind of a jazzy outro, which sounds really nice, sort of closing out the song. So it's technically like a 5-minute song if you include the the prelude before it. If you include the prelude. One of my favorite songs following that is the song Flecha al Sol, which is another one sung in Spanish, and this is just a fun song to listen to. Just so catchy, as well as love the riff on that track. It's just so carefree and stuff like that. It's definitely got sort of a feel-good vibe to it, but at the same time, definitely very compelling at the same time, with the way the guitar and the organ mix to create a little melody on the song. Some great drumming on this, really cool drumming on the song too. But following that, we're back to the English singing with the song Jealousy, which is definitely another one that I really like, which introduces some synthesizers into the mix, sort of incorporating maybe just a little bit of techno into the mix, but it definitely has kind of an old school tone at the same time, which I really like. But I like the kind of driving notes that the keyboards play on the song, that sort of pop up in different parts of the song. It's Bardo Martinez, the lead singer, is sort of describing jealousy as if it were maybe this person, or this girl that he's got that's not treating him right and stuff like that, because he feels like he's hanging from a thread on the top of this lover's game, swimming in a pool of endless shame. But also sort of saying, I understand you, even though you do make me sick, and stuff like that. And also some great keyboard work on the song as well. There's has kind of a Beatlesy sort of tone to it, with the Vox organ and the Mellotron, which pops up in the chorus as well. But then it's also got this sort of garage rock inspired riff, which definitely sounds like something out of some of Eric Clapton's best sort of recordings with bands like Cream or something like that, but also with their unique twist, which I like. And the synthesizers play really nicely over it. But then we get a bridge that definitely does show off some really interesting poeticism. It's sort of says sort of talking about how he met the wolf on the mountain, who said like everything's right, and since and since the wolf is most right, just I'll always trust her insight. Which sort of adds maybe a little bit of optimism to the song, but then still saying that's what you are to me, over some really nice flute playing. And there's also like some doo-wop vocals popping up, and some doo-wop backing vocals like in the bridge as well that I think sound really nice. And the next interlude, right off the back, does show off Bardo and Carlos's skills and uniqueness as guitarists. Even though it is probably my least favorite track on the record, because while I do like the chemistry of the guitars on this track, I do think that it does end abruptly for some reason, though it transitions really well into the song Run, which is probably my favorite track on the record, because it has by far the most unique and complex musical structure, in my opinion. It starts out kind of soulful, with some like peals of organs and guitar, and I like how the song is sort of like a little like musical journey through kind of a phase, in this moment that he's in, like sort of saying how before he reaches his high, his mind's eye has got to be clear. So he sort of reveals that he walks, and then eventually once he gets moved to do it, he runs, which the plucked mellotron strings as well as the the backup vocals sound really nice on there, before it eventually transitions into by far the most kind of energetic part of the song, which is when the guitars and keyboards get much more powerful and louder, and the backing vocals start getting great and stuff like that. And sort of revealing how he's on his way and stuff like that. Way and stuff like that, and sort of bringing a sense of hope to the song. And then following that, all the instruments drop out, which sort of shows our character sort of his footsteps finding a groove and communing with fire and stuff like that, and embraced his mind's wrath and blazed its path and sort of feels himself getting stronger, and he finally is at peace and stuff like that. Which is over kind of a folky part in the song, because there's a lot of bongos and stuff like that. And then eventually it does end with a really cool jazzy flute solo at the end. You'd be hard pressed to tell me that wasn't Ron Burgundy on the jazz flute at the end. But by far, probably the most unique sounding song on the record is The Taker Story, which Bardo Martinez, I learned, actually wrote this song totally on his own. I mean, he wrote the bass line and stuff like that. And of course, it does tell this story that is unlike anything I've heard in music, not just in this kind of music, but in general, really. Sort of talking about sort of how so it's sort of a song kind of about kind of, this agricultural revolution that we've all kind of gotten used to over time. That just when you think it's over, the war will never be over, because war is our bread and butter, as he says. And stuff like that. And also sort of bringing up some sort of symbolic metaphors for how it happens, with the opening line of, "Can you name a living creature that kills all its competitors for food?" and when they're gone, he kills the competitors of its food too. I'm talking about the birds, the aphids, the insects, and the trees, because there's innumerable extinct species among these. Like, he's not literally talking about animals or creatures here. He's rather using it as a metaphor for, like, sort of this war of, like, war and, like, bloodshed that unfortunately has existed for over, like, 12,000 years. But then he also does reveal how, you won't believe it, but native people are still around and stuff like that. And they are the true voice of reason, and they have nature's eyes, and how they've been enacting this story for over 3 million years. The one that says that human must obey natural law. And it's kind of how we kind of all decide what's good or bad for the universe, and stuff like that. So it's definitely a very interesting story lyrically, and definitely a very important sort of message, I think, of the song. Definitely very powerful. But not only is the lyrical content on this track great, but also like the layers of instruments as well. The bass line's really good. Some nice little weird organs and synths sort of weaving in and out of the song, and of course the backup vocals that the mariachi group provides on the song are definitely sound really cool. And I like how all the vocals were all done live, no overdubbing right here. But then there's also some other instruments that sound really nice, including a horn section in the background. Before it eventually transitions into the final track, which is the interlude, Area C, which has kind of this, this is probably like the truest, Cumbia sort of ballad on the record, driven by an acoustic nylon string guitar, but also features this really beautiful, sort of mournful electric guitar riff that's eventually backed up by some keyboards, a drum machine, a timpani, as well as some flute, which complements the ending riff beautifully, even though that is another track that I do feel does kind of end abruptly, even though it does close out the record, I think, on the best note, in my opinion. So yeah, definitely a great record, and I definitely would recommend it. It's the kind of, Chicano Batman definitely has the kind of sound that, you can't really put a label on it. I mean, you could call it psychedelic, or funk, or soul, or Latin, or indie rock, whatever, but, I don't think any of them would make sense. I mean, I put this album on my iTunes, and it said that it was Latin in the genre, but really there's just so much more than that, because, I love the very unique sound, the complex musical structures, the layers of instrumentation, the songwriting's fantastic. It's definitely a record that deserves some true acclaim, in my opinion, because it is literally that good, and a lot of fun to listen to. So that's my review of the new Chicano Batman album, Freedom is Free. I'll see you for episode 169.